about to meet a young woman with an extraordinary story to tell. Her name is Tinaresch. When Tina was just 14 years old, she found herself at the center of a frightening vortex, where objects moved of their own accord, and ordinary household appliances took on a life of their own. Were poltergeists to blame? Demonic possession? Or was it all an elaborate hoax? At least one noted parapsychologist believes the truth lies elsewhere, in the mysterious power of the mind. Tina was born on October 26, 1969, in Columbus, Ohio. 10 months later, Tina's mother brought her to the hospital and then disappeared. That same day, Tina was placed in the home of Joan and John Resch, longtime foster parents who had cared for more than 250 children.
She came into our home as a foster child when she was 10 months old. She'd been abandoned at the hospital by her mother. And we took care of foster children, and they called us and brought her out, and we fell in love with her right away.
Although the Resches had 5 children of their own, they adopted Tina. She was a happy little girl with a bubbly personality, but sometimes Tina boiled over. At the age of 8, she was diagnosed as hyperactive and placed on medication.
Teacher at school said she was throwing erasers and pencils and causing a problem at school. And I asked the teacher if she ever saw her do it, and she said no, she had never seen her do it, but she was sure it was Tina that was doing it.
The teachers made a big deal out of taking me out of the room to give me my medicine every day and drawing attention to it instead of quietly just giving it to me to take. Kids poked fun and said it's because I was crazy or that I had some mental problems, and kids are cruel.
The cruelty only worsened. Tina's parents took her out of school after the other children actually tied her up and taunted her mercilessly on the playground. Tina did her schoolwork at home with a private tutor. Initially, the change seemed to work. Tina apparently thrived and loved helping out with the foster children. Everything seemed calm, but subconsciously, Tina was under tremendous stress.
I left home on Sundays to go to church and on Thursday to go to Girl Scouts. Any other time I stayed home, I didn't go to friends' house. They didn't come to mine. I was just there with my parents 24 hours a day.
March 1984. Suddenly, on a quiet Saturday morning, reality began to go askew.
The hands just started going around at a very fast pace. The lights in the kitchen came on.
Tina!
I didn't know what was happening.
Did you turn the light on? No, I was in the other room. Will you turn it off, please, honey?
At first, Joan assumed Tina was playing a prank.
Tina! Will you quit fooling around?
I'm not fooling around. What did I do?
Well, what'd you turn the light back on for?
I didn't.
Well, it's not like...
I'd just turn the TV off. And when I turned it off, the picture was still there and the sound was still there. So I unplugged it. And when I unplugged it, the same thing. I thought, something happened, that we were getting surges of power. I don't know, things were happening so fast, you really didn't have time to think about it. The foster children were enjoying it, the ones that were big enough. I mean, they thought it was a real treat.
John Resch had been out running errands.
John?
When he returned, things were still haywire.
We're so close in here.
Honey, it won't turn them off.
You're kidding.
Oh,
Have you tried the buttons?
Yes, and everything. We've had some sort of electrical problem here. The garbage disposal turned on, the microwave turned on.
I think I better call Bruce.
John Resch immediately telephoned Bruce Claggett, an electrician.
There was an ungodly howling on the phone. Just an eerie howl that I'd never heard before. And it was so loud and disruptive you couldn't talk over it. it would howl, and we'd have to quit our conversation and wait till the howl died down and then start talking. And it was just as though it wasn't wanting us to communicate.
So you think it might be out here?
Well, that's where I always like to check first, see if all the breakers are good.
Immediately, I went to the main breaker box, took the cover off the fuse box, and I inspected all of the breakers and looked for any hot spots, no loose joints. Common reasoning was out the window, it seemed like. I just didn't know what was happening.
Breaker box is fine, exposed wiring's fine. I can't find a thing wrong.
Well, there was something wrong with it this morning. Obviously, it's not happening now.
If it happens again, call me, all right?
Sure. Thanks a lot.
As soon as Bruce Claggett walked outside, the electricity started to act up again.
Dad!
Bruce.
Just as Joan had earlier, Bruce also suspected a teenage prank.
Is there a wall switch for that?
Yeah, right there.
Well, it's on.
Yeah, of course it's on.
So what's the problem? The switch is on, the lamp is on.
That's the problem. The lights go on and off, switches go on and off.
By themselves, up and down?
That's what happens.
Tina.
No, I did
This
not
just
do-
didn't make sense, and I thought, she's playing tricks on her dad, turning lights
All
on
right,
and
I
off.
got an idea. I know how to check this out, okay?
I thought, well, I've got to have some way of turning that switch off and keeping it off. I thought, well, I'll put some tape on the switch, and that way it'll keep it from coming on. My thought process is, now no lights can come on because I have taped them down.
Okay, that should do it.
Bruce taped every light switch in the living room.
Let's just...
Then he and John went back to the switch by the front door to wait. They waited in the wrong place.
The hall lamp.
The tape was gone, and I saw that the switch was in the up position, but there was no sign of any Scotch tape. I had seen a phenomena that I cannot explain. The hair raised up right in the back of my head, and I was scared. I have to admit, I was scared. I wasn't fearful for my life being threatened or anything, but it just scared me to know that something's being able to do this without human hands touching it.
Austin, turn around.
Bruce Claggett finally gave up and left. But electrical problems would turn out to be the least of the Resch's worries.
What? What happened?
Did you see that? Did you see that?
You lean on it, Tina? Oh,
What happened?
What? Somebody pushed over my chair.
Yeah, like somebody pushed over the high chair.
Well, I felt somebody push it. I felt someone behind me, okay?
There are strange things happening around here, I'm telling you. Strange things. Oh, first the high chair. You hear that? Something broke.
Well, he was really getting upset. He had a hard time accepting everything that came along. Tina just said, I suppose I'll get blamed for this too. And within a couple hours, you couldn't even walk in that room. It was just full of glass. We had coasters that would fly around the room that had been on the bar, and things were just moving constantly.
I'm going to be out for a few minutes.
where are you going?
With no end of the havoc in sight, Tina went out for a walk.
All of a sudden, when she left the house, everything got real quiet. I got thinking back at other things that had happened when she was younger, and I thought maybe it all had a connection. Maybe this wasn't new, and that maybe she'd been blamed for a lot of things of which she had no control over.
Whenever I'd leave the house, everything would be quiet until I returned home. Or if I was sleeping, as long as I was asleep or not home, everything was quiet and peaceful.
That night, after Tina returned home, it became clear to her that she was at the center of whatever was plaguing her home.
John!
The next morning, more of the same.
Goes again!
Joan and John had become almost blasé.
Where'd this one come from?
From off of the counter.
Thought you weren't going to put them on the counter anymore. I thought you were going to put them in the cupboard and keep them in the cupboard.
My husband spent a good deal of time just cleaning up, sweeping, trying to keep a path through the house.
Tina, put the eggs into the refrigerator, please.
They were breaking, and we thought we'd put them back in the refrigerator and just take one egg out at a time. But the eggs came out through the door. By the time we were through with breakfast, we really had a mess.
I didn't know what to think. We were studying in theology about devils and all this, and I thought, that's got to be it. That's got to be it. Or this house is haunted. Something was wrong with this house.
And in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, I admonish you, Satan, to depart from this premises, never to return.
Joan Resch called her minister.
The kingdom of hell.
He attempted to cleanse the house and Tina herself of evil spirits.
In this household, never to return.
I was sick at the time also. I was having headaches and stomach cramps.
Any of the family.
People tried to tell me that I was possessed, and that scared me because I was just being confirmed into my church. And I have all these people telling me that I'm possessed, I'm going crazy, there's something wrong with me, and I started to believe them. Maybe there was something wrong with me.
Why now? Why all of a sudden are all these things happening?
The minister asked if he could talk to us for a little bit, so we went into the living room.
Now you see? Now there. That's what I mean.
And he looked around to see if there was anyone else other than Tina and her father and I. And there wasn't.
Well, you see,
And he said, there's some things we do not understand, and there really wasn't anything else he could do.
The bizarre occurrences and Tina's physical symptoms worsened. Doctors could find nothing wrong. Desperate for help, Joan called Mike Harden, a reporter who had earlier done a story on the Resches as a model foster family. Harden brought photographer Fred Shannon with him.
Why don't you gentlemen sit down, make yourself comfortable, and I'll make some coffee.
Thank you. That'd be wonderful.
Right.
So, Tina, when these things happen,
Tina was sitting there. To her left and on the floor was an Afghan. And that Afghan sat there all this time while we were there. I'm looking right at her.
God! Oh.
This Afghan lifted off the floor and zip and covered her head.
It pretty much happens everywhere. I couldn't really select one place.
I bring the camera up to my eye with my finger on the trigger, and I waited, and I waited, and 25 minutes, my arm got tired and nothing happened. So I brought the camera down.
we're fine.
I went this way, and the phone went that way. Now, what's that tell you?
Tina, do you know what's causing this?
Whatever this thing is, the force, or whatever you want to call it, it knew I had a camera. But the force did not want its picture taken. So at this point, I had the camera up to my eye about 5 minutes. And I very slowly, with my finger to the camera, my eye continues to go over. Bingo! I popped the trigger, and that's the picture the world saw.
I did not see her start it in motion or aid its motion or help it in any way. It moved from left to right in front of her. That's her left to right on a level, even trajectory. That's it. That's what I saw. How do I explain it? I don't know.
Tinaresch became a media sensation. She was hounded by journalists, many of them highly skeptical. One of the reporters generated a different kind of headline, and he and his crew caught Tina in the act of hoaxing an episode.
They kept telling my mother, well, we're not going to leave unless we see something happen. And my mom said, all right, something's got to happen, because she was getting tired of this, and she's not the type of person to be pushing and tell him to leave. So I sat on a chair and knocked the lamp over. My mom took me to another room, and she said, we've got to do something. I said, okay.
And then I was coming out of my room, and the book almost...
Tina's explanation satisfied most of her media critics, and Mike Harden called in noted parapsychologist William Roll. formerly affiliated with Duke University in North Carolina. His specialty is psychokinesis, movement of inanimate objects apparently caused by the power of the mind.
The objects would fly into the hallway.
For the first 3 days, nothing happened in my presence, and I was sort of dubious. But then, on the 4th day of our visit, things began happening in my presence.
Now, we are in Tina's bedroom, and it's Thursday morning, and at this particular point in time, there haven't been any occurrences. Tina is kneeling.
I was watching her on the other side of the bed. She was cleaning up some water she just spilled.
I would say she's about 7 feet from me at this particular point.
I didn't touch it. I didn't do it.
Now, we just had our first occurrence.
Tina obviously had no contact with the cop. Now I knew that this was for real and that there was something happening in the home. There was another incident when there was a crashing sound behind me in the bedroom, in the master bedroom. I went in and found a painting on the floor leaning against the wall.
My mom's favorite picture.
Tina was very upset about this because this was her mother's best picture.
Not to worry, then I'll get there. All right.
There was a pair of pliers that I decided to use as a makeshift hammer.
Just like you. Yes, my tape recorder. All right, now let's just...
At last, it appeared that Tina's paranormal powers were putting on a show for William Roll.
Yes, I think...
It was clear to me that it needed to be researched further, and it was also clear that Tina was a girl who needed counseling, she needed help, and we decided that she return with me to North Carolina where we could continue counseling with Tina.
William Roll became convinced that at the time, Tina was unusually susceptible to electrical energy. A magnetic storm in the Earth's atmosphere may have triggered an ability to inadvertently manipulate the physical environment.
Occurrences that happened in the Resch home were an expression of Tina's inner turmoil. There's not, I think, a sharp distinction between what is in here and what's out here. The two are interrelated, are meshed with each other. And in Tina's case, this force's energy was stronger than it is for most of us.
I think it just built up until it got to a point it exploded. And it just seemed like she had no control over it, but she was, in a way, doing it with her mind.
Tina's symptoms and the psychokinetic occurrences eventually subsided. Today they have disappeared almost entirely, yet the emotional scars remain.
I just feel that anybody who knows about this is going to look at me like I'm crazy. And it's just another thing to be different. It doesn't end. Because I can't cover up my past and I can't hide it from anyone. So it's right out there in plain view. I feel vulnerable to it.
What are we to make of Tinaresch? It is important to remember that each episode was witnessed, and in one case even photographed, by someone other than Tina. She herself never claimed to have any special powers. In fact, Tinaresch always appeared more mystified, and certainly more distressed than anyone else, when it came to the bizarre events she seemed to precipitate. The official position of the mainstream medical community is that psychokinesis, the ability to move objects with the mind, does not exist. However, when we called the psychology department of a major university, one of their eminent PhDs quietly admitted, quote, "It may not exist officially, but I myself have seen it happen and have no explanation for it. No explanation at all."